Hi guys, welcome back to SnT Networks. In today's video, we'll be talking about SAML. SAML basically is Security Assertion Markup Language. It is a type of SSO. So the first question, that'll come in your mind is what is SSO, right? SSO is nothing but single sign-on. Now, what do you mean by single sign-on? Single sign-on is basically wherein when you try to access something, so you're a user, right? You're trying to access something in your corporate network. This is your gateway. You try to connect, and you have multiple applications here. Correct? Now, once you try to log in, so you log in, and traditionally, what used to happen was you were supposed to log in each application. You know, so basically, it's like put in credentials for one, you get access to one. Put in credentials for two, you get access to two. Put in credentials for three, you get access to three. Third application, one, two, and three. Right? Now, or we used to use cookies, right? So again, single sign-on uses cookies, but the only difference you would find is if you're a user, you try to access into uh, this is your gateway. Okay, this is your company gateway. You try to access into an application. You get access. This will provide you access. You get access to this, but you get a lateral movement also. Like if there are, 5, 6, 10 applications, you can use a single token to access into all the other applications. So it simplifies, right? Single sign-on. You have to just sign in once using that, what do you call sign in or the credentials that you've set or multi-factor authentication, whatever you have set, you get access to the other applications as well. So this is basically single sign-on. But this video is, about SAML. So we'll talk about SAML in brief. We'll basically talk about the flow. You know, So what is SAML? SAML is basically Security Assertion Markup Language. It is a XML type of SSO. If you can remember this, if you can understand this, then I think the whole SAML part becomes pretty easy. Okay, XML based SSO you can say. Okay, so uh, basically what happens is nowadays like most of the companies have moved to SAML, right, from LDAP. Mostly because first point it is cloud based. Most of the SAML we will be cloud based. Okay, and it's pretty easy to use and easy to configure, plus very easy to troubleshoot. So it's basically an overall package, plus it also helps you with AAA, authentication, authorization, and accounting. Okay, so this is beneficial in that stance as well. Now let's talk about our flow. How does the SAML flow work? So if you're a user, you're right here. You try to log in into any service provider. What is a service provider? For example, it could be uh, my network, okay, or my VPN device, whatever. Just for simplification, you try to log in into VPN, right? What do? You have a laptop, you connect your VPN, and after connecting to your VPN, you try to connect to just directly SNT networks. But you cannot go there directly, right? Basically, it will once your VPN is configured, it will have some sort of default gateway also configured. It will take you to the default gateway first. From there, correct, it will again take you to or probably your default gateway will be a VPN device or your access device, or it will take you to the VPN or your access device. Okay, sorry, yeah, it will take you to VPN or your access device. From there, you will get access. This is usually the flow, correct, if we understand simple networking. So come back here. Now the science behind SAML is again same, not much difference, but the internal flow gets a bit different. So now you're here. You're at SNT, you're a user who wants to connect to SNT networks. You've connected to the VPN, everything. Okay, or you're in your internal network, internal corporate network. Now you reach out to access SNT. You say that I want access to SNT, but it will redirect you to service provider because you're not authenticated yet. Correct? So now you go to your service provider. Once you are in your service provider, you will be redirected for authentication to the identity provider. So now, so one is service provider, second is identity provider, IDP. Okay. So, and okay, we'll talk about all things, all of these things, as we go, basically deep dive into it. So, what is SP? SP is a service provider. What will be the SP? It will usually be your gateway, default gateway, or your VPN device, okay, or your firewall, whatever. Okay, what is your IDP? IDP is the actual device which will help you get the identity. Okay, this is your identity provider. So identity provider will be your simple SAML server. Correct? So two things are clear. Now let's erase this because we have to explain all lot of things simultaneously. SP and IDP is done. Now see, now we redirected to the identity provider, wherein the identity provider says you have to enter your credentials first. So you get a prompt to enter your credentials. This is a user which will enter his password, username and password. Right? Once you enter username and password, it gets checked on to the database. In the database, it will see either it's pass or fail. So now, considering it as pass, you get the response back, it has pass, and your what do you call that information will be passed to the identity provider, pass or fail. If it is pass, it will create an assertion. Third point. Now, what is an assertion? Assertion will be nothing but your user information. Okay, consider IDP is the SAML server, right? IDP is sort of an your user database collection, your domain. Okay, your SAML server will have all the domain information. That means all the user information. Out of that, what the assertion will have, it will have that user information specifically. It will have timestamps. It will have that user identity, right? What group it belongs to, all of that information. Okay, now that information, what the SAML server will do, or the identity provider, it will create the SAML assertion and send it to the service provider. Now, two of them have the assertions. One assertion, the same assertion, and again here also, since it's again networking, we check the integrity. Okay, so in integrity of the assertion will be checked. If it is checked, if it is yes, then we mean that the assertion was not tampered with. Nobody tampered with the assertion. So once the integrity is checked, then we move on to a different aspect. Then we use that assertion, right? And assertion will only be created when your username and credentials are right. Whatever your credentials are, plus if you have multi-factor authentication, right? If you are connected, I mean by connected, if your credentials are correct, if you pass the authentication, only then the assertion will be created. So once the assertion is created, it is passed from the identity provider to the service provider. Now the service provider has the assertion. It uses that assertion, correct, and it says, okay, now you have access, correct. But the service provider will also have a lot of ACLs and authentication settings. Like here, you pass on in assertion, you pass on username and group, correct. But ACL, auth ACLs, I'll say, auth ACL or grouping will have second part, authorization, correct. Now, so if, for example, user is Nitesh and group is L1, okay, give access to tree. But if user is Nitesh, group is L2, give access to tree 2. Now it will see what group it has passed. Okay, group is tree. Sorry, group is L1. So if group is L1, what authorization will it give you? It will give you authorization for tree. If it is L1, it will give you authorization to tree. So the authorization part will be done here. Okay. But only the values will be sent from the assertion. It will be sent by the identity provider. Now what happens is you get, let me just rub this off quickly. Okay. Now the authentication is done. Correct. The assertion is sent. So once the assertion is sent from the IDP to SP, this is also checked. The integrity is checked. Integrity is checked. Authorization is checked. Once using this assertion, the authorization is checked. The user is basically given a token, a log will be marked, and it will be sent that okay, you have access. Now you can like you're authorized to access. So now the user, as per the authorization also, can access SnT networks. Okay, this is your basic workflow, SAML workflow. Okay, and again, one more part here will be metadata. This is basically why we call it XML based authentication. So once you try to configure SAML, right? So what you do in SAML is you go to identity provider, you will create a lot of things like entity ID, okay? Then you have URLs, okay? So in configuration on the IDP, once you enter all this, it will generate and create a metadata file. This will be based on XML. Okay. Now in configuration terms, what you have to do is you have to fetch that metadata file, download it, and then add it to the same like add it in a service provider also. You have to add that metadata and make sure the entity ID is same. It has to be same. Correct? That's a prerequisite. So this is how basically both of them will have the same metadata, both of them will be able to reach, correct? And they have similar connections. So once this is done, you will see an amber light stating that okay, now we are connected to both, or you will not get any errors basically once this is done. Later on, when you try to authenticate, the flow part comes in, but this is a prerequisite. So now we'll go through the SAML part very quickly. You try to log in into SNT, but it takes you to your service provider SP. SP will take you to IDP for authentication. When you pass the authentication as per your database or domain details, an assertion will be created. That assertion will be sent back to the service provider. The service provider will check the integrity of that assertion, check the assertion. According to the assertion, it will give you authentication and authorization. Correct? As per your authorization, you will be allowed to access, correct, the SNT networks as per your authorization, plus a lot of bunch of other applications because your token is already created. So this is a basic SAML workflow. But again, I will show you in an open source like Okta. You have multiple, you can configure SAML in AWS, correct? You can also have Azure. There are a lot of other providers, but Okta is one that I use, which is pretty easy to use. So I'll help you with that as well. I'll show you in another session. But this is basic flow about SAML. And if you know this, then working on any provider is pretty easy. Either it's because SP can be anything. SP can be VPN, firewall, etc., right? But IDP is usually a SAML server. So these are the types of SAML servers. It will not be that difficult, but these are the four things that you need to understand and work on, these four things. And rest, if you know the flow, then it's not that difficult. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. I'll definitely answer them. And yeah, I hope this was helpful. Thank you.